Thank you, Sir. We are humbled to be part of this fellowship this evening. I don't know if everyone can hear us or if we are audible enough.
I think I cannot hear you very well. I don't know if it is my problem or it is I don't know if others can hear you, but for me, as I hear, we cannot hear you. I don't know what's the problem.
We can hear you. We can hear you maybe a little bit louder, but we can hear you.
Okay, thank you very much. So, yeah, praise the Lord. We are so humbled to be part of this fellowship this evening. And as Saul introduced, we are not experts in debt management. We are learning just like everyone else. So we would like to, first of all, give a brief introduction about who we are, so that as we interact, as we share, delve into scripture and delve into real life experiences, you're able to know who you are interacting with. So I'm engineer Denis Taremwa. I currently work with National Water and Sewage Corporation as a director in charge of infrastructure planning and development. I've been in the corporation for the last 15 years. And yeah, that's actually the same number of years that I've been married to Rose, my wife. I remember we got married shortly after I joined the corporation. So we are blessed with 2 children, and we stay in Buwate, that is on your way towards Chira. And I think I'll give Rose a chance to say her names, introduce herself, and then we also give more insights on what we know about finances.
Someone is saying, I think, can we get some people confirming you can hear us, please?
Yes, please, we can hear you.
Okay. Okay, I can see Prim saying it is okay. Praise God, everyone. I don't know why he's asking me to introduce myself. I thought he did, but I am Rose. Maybe he wanted to add my maiden name, Chotunjire Taremwa. I work for a global organization. I manage policy and ethics. So if we're in the context of Uganda, I would possibly be a Minister of Ethics and Integrity. That's what I do for my organization. I'm also involved in doing investigations and that kind of thing. And I think Denis did a good introduction on the other bits. We are happy to be here. Also to re-echo that really we are not experts in financial management and debt management, but we'll be able to share some experiences that we've had and maybe the foundation of where we got them from. Otherwise, we are happy to interact with you, and I think we'll also try to make it interactive at some point. Otherwise, thank you so much, and you're welcome. So we will start off. We actually have a presentation. If you don't mind, we can share.
Do share.
Yeah, give us just a minute to share the presentation. Can you see something?
Not yet.
Someone can confirm?
Yes, we can see now.
Okay, so just an overview on what we are going to go through this evening. We've finished a bit of the introduction. Denis will be taking us through understanding the date and defining what the date is. Then we'll also go through assessment of the date. And then we, as Christians, we want to go through, what does the Bible tell us about this issue of debt management? And then we will look at debt management strategies, and then creating a debt management plan, and then maintaining a financial discipline, and then we'll do a conclusion. Thanks.
All right. So thank you. Straight away into the introductory bit. I've already told you who we are. Maybe just another preamble I would like to just put across the room is that when I finished university, that's about 16 years ago, I spent the first 6 months without a job. And in those 6 months, I had the opportunity to read about 5 books about finance and investment. And one thing I can testify is that those were the most rewarding months of my time, because when I eventually got a job, I was able to use the same principles, to use the same lessons that I had learned over that period to manage my finances. So we actually started planning for retirement with our first jobs because of the time we had to first read and get as much information and knowledge about finances as possible. So today's session is basically talking about debt management as a financial discipline. And one of the things, of course, we are going to be looking at is how we can be free from debt, or how we can use debt to grow and to move out of debt. And we'll be explaining and throwing more context on that. So debt management is crucial for our financial health. Of course, we all know that excessive debt has led to financial stress. It has caused damage to scores. A number of people have had challenges with damaged credit scores. They go to different places and you find they are not able to get debt. And of course, in the extreme or in the worst case scenario, some people have even ended up being bankrupt. And so today we'll explore the basics of debt. Of course, we'll be looking at strategies of how we can manage debt. And then we'll also explore some of the habits we can employ so that we maintain financial discipline. And of course, we believe that by the end of our presentation, or as we start on this journey, we should be aiming for freedom from debt. So I would like to just briefly try to understand debt, and we tried to look for simple definitions of what debt is. And according to the dictionary, debt is a sum of money that is owed or due. And if we take it to a personal level or to a household level, a debt is defined as a summation of all the liabilities that a household or individual has that require payment of interest, or the principal together with the interest. So it is money that is owed to creditors, and it is a due for payment at a fixed date in the future. So it is something that we know that we are supposed to pay, or that we owe, depending on who, of course, gave us that debt. And a number of discussions, of course, have been going on, or the school lines of thought, is there good or bad debt? And here we'll try to see or to understand whether actually debt is good or bad. So yes, debt can be good and it can also be bad, depending, of course, on how you look at it, or how you use the money, or how you secure that money. And some of the important questions that we should be asking ourselves as we go into that context of whether debt is good or bad. one of the questions we need to ask ourselves is, will borrowing this money make me money someday in the future? Whenever you're reaching out to borrow or to get into any debt, the very first question you should be asking yourself is, when I take this money today, will it make me money tomorrow? Or will it make me money a few months down the road or a few years down the road? Then the second question would be, does it make sense to take money out for this reason? And that, of course, involves you looking at the reason for which you're trying to pick out the money, trying to see for how long, of course, you're going to keep this money. So if the reason for which you're borrowing this money doesn't seem reasonable enough or is convincing enough to yourself and other people around you, then you need to be careful or think twice about that debt. Of course, there is good debt. We all know that people have gotten mortgages, for example, to buy houses, to buy facilities. In the advanced world, of course, we know that the educational loans, where you get debt that you use to finance your education, with the hope that after school you're going to be able to get a job and repay your debt and also be able to fend and take care of yourself. Of course, people in the construction industry, I know they do take debts to finance their contracts, construction works. Maybe they have supplies and they don't have funds to use to do the down payments or to order for materials. So when you are getting money that is going to add value to you, we could call that a good debt. However, there are bad debts. There is credit card debt, where you're acquiring debt for consumption. There is debt spent on wants, on luxuries. Maybe you already have a set of things, maybe in your home, or you're trying to upgrade to impress. So you end up with debt that is actually not necessary, and that is what one would call bad debt. And so when we delve further, the question we need to be asking ourselves is, how much debt is bad for a person? Of course, I know a number of us have had debt from time to time. Even ourselves, of course, we also have debt. And the question would be, how much debt is bad for a person? And we try to simplify this by coming with a simple ratio. And that is what they call the debt to income ratio. And what this looks at, it looks at your monthly debt obligations and compares them to your gross monthly income. So how does this work? If, for example, you have a debt, let's say about 10 or so million, which you are supposed to be paying in about 10 months, that means that every month you are ideally supposed to be paying back about 1 million shillings. And then you compare this with your income. If your income is said 2 million, it means that out of the 2 million you're getting at the end of the month, 1 million is supposed to be going towards debt repayment, which accounts for about 50% of your monthly income. So what does of course, the finances say that a good debt to income ratio is less than or equal to 36%. So any debt to income ratio above 43% is considered to be too much debt. And those of you who are familiar, of course, with the finances of this country, I think you've had our Minister of Finance, of course, the President, you've had different politicians and economists talking about Uganda's debt not being sustainable. Of course, in that they look at how much we have borrowed, how much we are paying back at the end of every month or at the end of a financial year, compared to how much we are generating as a country. So any debt that is above 43% is considered to be too much. Of course, the country, yeah, I think Uganda, they've been talking about 50% as being sustainable, not sustainable. But at an individual level, we need to be conscious that anything that takes us beyond 40% is honestly on the high end. And before long, we may find ourselves are in a very difficult situation. And so what are some of the consequences of excessive debt? One, of course, the interest costs. Most debt comes with interest, be it loan sharks, be it mortgages. So there's a cost that you pay at the end of the day. There are other fees and other charges. Of course, I'm aware that, or many of you may be familiar that every time you go to the bank to get a loan, other than the interest cost that they are charging you, there are other fees that you normally see. You don't normally see. I think they are normally they call them processing fees. I think there are things like insurance. Those words which are normally written in small letters which you're not able to read. But at the end of the day, you find that if you're getting a loan of about 90 million, at the end of the day, they may end up crediting your account with about 85 or even 84. So you keep incurring charges or fees every time you go for debt. And of course, there is the inability to qualify for new credit. I know you're all aware that I think for you to get a loan, you need a financial card. And that financial card, I think, keeps tracking your financial records across the different banks. And if you jumping from one bank to the other, at the end of the day, your financial card is able to show that you can't qualify for any more credit. And of course, in a worst case scenario, there is what we fear most, bankruptcy. And I know you're all aware that we've had a number of tycoons who have run bankrupt. You're very familiar with the term of Kampala Yanema kati nzira yo mu kyalo. So that is, I think, on a grassroots level of what bankruptcy actually means. Of course, there are mental health impacts. When you're heavily indebted, you can't avoid being stressed. You're always worried. You start running away from your friends. That is, if you borrowed from your friends and you fail to pay back. And of course, there is a risk of imprisonment. When you've gotten money from loan sharks, they start running after you left, right, center. And of course, that goes into the physical health impacts, anxiety. You've had people getting ulcers. In extreme cases, people get high blood pressure, they get heart attacks, and even depression that actually results or ends up in death. So we have a very big challenge at hand, and that's why we need to see how we tackle and manage our debt. So we are required to keep taking stock or assessing our debt. And that, of course, involves looking at all the liabilities. If we have loans, if we have mortgages, if we have consumer credits, if we have debt, of course, any other accounts payable, money owed to friends, to investment clubs, and all that. And it is important that we keep listing them. We look at the balances, we look at the interest rates, and of course, we calculate the monthly repayments. And the whole idea is that we should be looking at tackling the high interest debt and we prioritize it for payment. So one of the things that has been helping us is that before we normally get into debt, we always prepare what we call an amortization plan. We look at how much money we are going to borrow. We look at the period over which we are going to pay it. And then we look at how fast or how quickly we are going to pay or how it is going to impact on the money that is coming into our pockets at the end of the day. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Denis. I will take us through, the references for the Bible, especially that we are Christians. And these I was reading some of them, they are a bit tough, but these are not our words. This is the word of God. So if we look, for example, Psalms 37:21, I will briefly go through them and we can even make reference after. It says the wicked borrows but do not pay back. Borrows but does not pay back. But the righteous give generously. And here we are looking at, like people who oppress others in pursuit of prosperity. I'm sure even in our country here, we have examples of people. Here you can even give an example of corruption, people steal money to use it for their own, own gains at the expense of others. We've also seen other examples where people don't pay back, or someone even goes to a level of killing someone because of money. Then Proverbs 22:7, the rich rules over the poor, and the borrower is slave to the lender. So basically, when we are in debt, you become a servant to the lender. And if I'm sure possibly every one of us on a call has ever borrowed money, you know what it feels when you borrowed money, especially from somebody. Maybe the bank, you don't meet them every day, but when you've borrowed from someone, every time you meet them, or they're even calling to say hello, somehow you're worried, you think, they are asking for their money. Then while being in debt is not a sin, Romans encourages us as Christians to avoid being in debt, but be in a debt of loving Christ. And I think, as Christians, when we read that, the only debt, Ibanja, that we can have is loving Christ. I think that speaks deep. Then Ecclesiastes 11:1-2. It says, send your grain across the seas, and in time, profits will flow back to you. I think this speaks into investments, and then divide your investments among many places, for you do not know what risks might lie ahead. Invest in 7 streams of income, and meaning do not put all your eggs in one basket. An example I can give here, in 2017, I know Denis and I, from the time we got married, we were very, very blessed to be counseled by an old couple that goes to St. Francis. It's an old couple, they live in Entebbe. And we were counseled for 8 months. 8 months. And one of the things I remember that they taught us was managing money in one basket, managing money as a couple. And they went ahead towards our wedding. For people, I'm sure, who are on the call who could have attended our wedding, they may not have noticed, but we had planned for 700 people. And that couple made us cut costs for that wedding. We didn't do more invitations of people who had not invited. They really helped us with starting off so well. I remember they encouraged us to pay for the house we're going to enter for 1 year in advance. I remember we lived in that house as if it was ours. And all those years that, we made our small salaries, we were saving them because we didn't have to spend on rent. And they made us, cut costs for the wedding. We came out with a profit that we used actually to buy an asset. So when I read this, so in 2017, I did a course and we studied about 7 streams of income. So I think personally, Denis is very much better at financial management, better than I am. He's actually, over the years, 15 years, taught me how to save. It's not that I used not to save, but maybe I used not to look at it as something very serious, much as I'm not a heavy spender, but I was not putting that to mind a lot. 7 streams of income, including, you have assets? Yes, but you need money like daily. I think that's where we've not yet reached. We are still, on the journey of having the 7 streams of income. But it is very important, even as we plan for our retirement. We also thought of having these interesting quotes, about finances. There's this interesting one, that debt is a form of bondage. It is a financial terminology by P. Withrin. Then the only man who sticks closer to you in adversity than a friend is a creditor. Now, when you think about that, before you take, a loan, or before you borrow from someone, you imagine someone else who sticks closer than a friend is a creditor. And that is unknown. Then there are 3 kinds of people: they haves, they have nots, and they have not paid for what they have. Said by E. Wilson. And another one, if you think nobody cares if you're alive, try missing a couple of car payments, by the same author. That is also interesting. You imagine, if you think no one cares when you're alive, you try missing a couple of car payments. I think here he put a car payment, but it could also be a loan payment for people, when you get a loan from the bank, or you want to acquire something, you know how those people can really follow you up, like they follow you up like you're a real thief when time has reached. Then before borrowing money from a friend, decide which you need most. This is an American proverb. So you need the money or you need a friend. I think possibly this quote, it is not to say that we don't borrow money from friends. We have done that up to now. You know, you borrow money from a friend or a friend borrows money from you. But, you know, I think it is to take precaution and be careful that you don't lose that friend. The other quote is, wars in old times were made to get slaves. The modern implement of imposing slavery is debt. And I think, you know, there are many examples we can think about. For example, the continent of Africa. Sometimes, you know, we feel we are slaves, you know, to the Western countries because of, you know, we need to keep getting money from them for us to survive, you know, as Africans. Then a creditor is worse than a slave owner, for the master only owns your person, but a creditor owns your dignity and they can command it. This is Victor Hugo, and I think Denis mentioned previously on bankruptcy that we've seen people, you know, go bankrupt. We've had people in close to our families that we have seen that we used to look at as very rich people. I know every one of us in our own areas or spheres, you have someone who was really very rich, you know, in quotes, because also being rich is relative. But right now they are somewhere, maybe they've lost it, they've lost their dignity, they've lost their respect and command, and it happens. And, you know, something to be aware of is that anyone can go bankrupt. I think sometimes we forget, maybe you reach somewhere, you say, now I can manage to pay for my rent, I have a car, I can manage to pay school fees for my children, you have some few assets and you think you can't go there, but a bad debt can push you to bankruptcy, and everyone is a candidate.
All right. Yes, thank you. I hope we are still audible and everyone is following.
Yes, we are following.
Okay, thank you. So we want to briefly look at our debt management strategies, or what we can put in place to manage a debt. And one of the first principle is what we call the snowball method. And this involves paying off small debts first, because that kind of gives you like some psychological momentum or relief. If you have about 10 or so debts and you list them, you look at which one is the smallest of all, and then you try to clear those first so that you at least reduce on your to-do list or on the list of creditors. That can give you some bit of energy to proceed and clear the outstanding ones. And then there is what they call the avalanche method. And this entails paying off debts with the highest interest rates first, because that helps you to save money in the long run. Here I'll give an example. We had an investment club which where we were putting money every month. And when we were upgrading or improving the terms of the investment club, we decided to start giving out a low interest loans to our members. And I remember that time we were giving interest, we're charging interest of about 1%, which of course, when you look at the annual period, that comes to about 12% per annum. And at that time, we had a loan where we were paying about 18% per annum. And one of the decisions we did was to restructure that loan and actually get money from the investment club to clear off the other loan where the interest was much higher. And that kind of gave us a bit of relief to at least breathe for some time. And then there is what they call debt consolidation. And that involves, of course, consolidating your debt into a single or lower interest loan that can simplify payments. If you find that you have debts which are cut, I think, like spread across different institutions with different loan sharks, and you get a good deal of where one single entity is able to clear all that debt for you and then structure it into a more attainable and a lower interest rate facility, that would be something that would be worth considering. And then, of course, there is the option of negotiating with creditors. I know banks also listen when you're financially distressed. They are able to listen to you. You can go and discuss, you structure the payment terms,
You pay
of
it
course, or you see how you can pay it off.
Mm.
If you have loan sharks who are on your case, of course, you can sit and talk and see how to at least get some breathing space. And then there is the snowball flaking, and that is what they call here we apply small extra payments towards debt, such as selling items or using unexpected windfalls. And this has worked for us quite a lot because every time we have a loan from the bank, for example, we always strive to clear it within the shortest possible time. Because if you have done a loan amortization plan, one of the things you realize is that if you keep paying part of the principal through what they call early repayment, then you're able to restructure the interest because the interest comes down significantly, and it also helps you to have breathing space because you're able to have less monthly installments paid, or if you maintain the monthly installments, then it shortens your payment period from about 4 years to about 3 years, eventually 2 years, and even 1 year. So it is one thing that is good that you can actually benefit from. Instead of leaving for the entire loan to run for 4 or 5 years, you can actually plan to keep making monthly installments. Whatever you get, you just put there. You find that is giving you some good relief. So how can we prepare a debt management plan? Of course, it is important to define or have clear financial goals. And here you're looking at what you want to achieve as a person, and you're looking at, of course, paying off your debt. One of the things that as a couple is that one of our financial goals that we set during our counseling time was to plan for early retirement. And by early retirement, our target was that by the time we are at least within the ages of 45 to 50, we should be at least having passive income that is able to meet our daily needs, that is able to help us to move and survive without any financial distress. So that has helped us. Even when we get into debt, we know what our objective is and we know what our ultimate goal is. And that helps us to make sure that we clear in time. We also do a lot of mathematics. We weigh the risks involved. The mathematics that we learned in school, of course, was not in vain, because much as it was hard then, I realized when we are older, when we are now in the field practicing and in charge of the affairs of this country, we actually realize that we need that mathematics quite a lot. So that involves evaluating the interest. If normally what happens when people are coming to give us loans, especially these bank people, they normally send the very good marketeers who are very smart. Their target is to confuse you, not to understand the underlying conditions. And just like I initially said, some of I think the terms and conditions are normally written in very small letters that you actually can't read. But one thing that you need to do is, before you get into that debt, try and sit and compute and see exactly what you're getting into. We've had issues, especially where I work. I've seen a number of companies run bankrupt, and this is because they don't calculate their risks. They don't do their mathematics every time they are getting into a contract and every time they are getting debt to finance that contract. So you find a contractor for example, has priced the contract, all his items, he's not gone into detail to look at how much profit he's actually going to get out of this contract. And so he goes into debt, and at the end of the day, before he even realizes, or after signing, he actually realizes that the interest that he's paying in that debt or out of financing the contract is way, way more than the profit that he's actually going to get out of that contract. So it is always important that you first see how much money you expect to get out of this deal or any investment you're going into, whether it will be actually able to repay that interest and leave you with a balance at least to carry on. And then there is the other one of prioritizing debt. Of course, just like we mentioned earlier, it is important to focus on high interest or high balance debts first, because that gives you a bit of leverage or room to reduce on how much money you're paying actually in interest. And then there is one principle that is internationally used in debt payment, that is using the 50, 30, or 20 rule. And this looks at 50% for necessities. Of course, that is where the tithing and the offertory, of course, is taken care of. We have 30% for discretionary spending. That is, I know we are a social community. We do spend on different things. We have contributions to different causes or weddings, or people are sick, or you're raising school fees. We have people that we support back in the villages. So all that falls within the 30%. And then, of course, you have 20% for saving and debt repayment. And when you look at that 20%, ideally, 20% is way below the debt income ratio that we talked about earlier. So it means that if your debt is in the range of 40 or 30 to 40%, then already this 20% alone is not enough. It means that you should be picking part of money from discretionary spending, picking part of money from necessities, and dedicating all that towards debt repayment. That is if you're actually working towards getting out of debt. But if you are way above the 35% and you still find that you actually can't even spend more than 20% on debt repayment or savings, then definitely, without any doubt, you find you're heading for bankruptcy. And then one last one, of course, once you have a debt management plan, it is important that you review it regularly. If, for example, you have your own amortization plan, you have made some down payments along the way, you need to get back to the plan and review. So now that I've made this payment, how much money am I still owed? How much money do I still need to pay? Or you see how basically you're able to balance the boat. Of course, there are times when we encounter things like job loss. Maybe you entered into a deal, you had the supply, maybe the goods you supplied were defective. The client is telling you to replace the goods. Of course, there are medical emergencies that normally come about. So all these require you to adjust your plan and to see how you can improve and get things better.
You have reminded me about that dose one time that was refused. Thank you so much, Dennis. Just to share a light moment, I was telling him when he mentioned that sometimes that you can supply goods and they are rejected. Earlier in our years of trying to build ourselves, we had a construction company which later turned into a consultancy firm, and there was a project in some areas in Masindi, and we put doors, and all of them were rejected. You try to imagine. So we had to look for more money to fix other doors. So some of those things happened, and we've gone through them. So I know time is moving up, so we will go through maintaining our financial discipline. And one of the things that we've done is budgeting and tracking expenses. We try as much as possible not to just spend without a budget. And there are several apps on Play Store And the one we use as us is Money Manager. You can get it, or other apps are there. You track your expenditures and also do like a monthly budget. So at least like we have an awareness of how much we spend at home on a monthly basis, especially for constant items. Then building an emergency fund. We can aim for about 3 to 6 months, but you can extend it even to 2 years worth of expenses in an easily accessible savings account. And one of the accounts that we have found very useful is unit trust. I'm sure maybe most of you have heard about it, or some of you are using it. But we started saving on this unit trust, I think, I even don't remember as when, because like I mentioned before, we were very, very lucky to have got people who really counseled us so well into financial management from the beginning. So we started, small, putting even 30,000, and you can't imagine how money grows. It grows. So even as we age into these years, you don't want to be found in an emergency that you can't even finance like a quarter of it. And that is money that can help you, of course, with school fees, money that can help you with, let's say you run out of a job. And one thing I want to mention, sometimes when you're talking, people, look at you at now. We've gone through all phases of life. And we've tried to work. We've done so many things. We've tried out so many projects, so many activities. We've sold, we've, we've run around to do so many things. So it is possible that at least you can try to build this fund. Then avoiding new debt. This is where you already have a debt, then you go for another one. We are saying let's be cautious of credit offers and loan opportunities, like Denis mentioned. They are everywhere. Even sometimes for people who earn salary, banks are very smart. I'm not criticizing people who are working in a bank. They also have to make money. But when your salary hits your account, you receive a message. Now you qualify, to get 50,000 or something. Already they are enticing you. So we're also saying let's try to live within our means, especially not to borrow to impress. And one of the things I want to say here, I think I got this from my dad. I'm one person who lives within my means, that I even feared getting loans, I think, until early this year when I had to take one for a family project. But I've always feared to take loans. I always live in my means. And for friends who are close to some of us, because you're used to living within your means, people think you actually have the money which you don't have. But just because you're used to living within your means. We can always delay, things, or you save for it until when you're able to get all that money. Not to be in a hurry to do things. I am a lady. I will get a dress I put on like 5 years ago, and I go for a wedding. I don't need to look for money to buy another dress if I can't. If I can, yes, I spoil myself, but it must be a bit necessary really to do. Then monitoring credit reports. It is important that we check our bank statements regularly. I used to be slacking on this one. Denis is very good at it, until I won't mention a bank, but I had a bit of a big transaction, and it was actually captured twice, and I got to know about it a bit late. So it is important at least to monthly at least check your statements to know whether your money is spent well, because we've also had frauds in banks where if they notice you don't track your expenditures or your debits, they would keep removing like small amounts of money that you're not able to detect, and in the end it sums up to a lot of money. We already talked about investing in 7 streams of income, and this is Ecclesiastes 11:1-2, that you divide your investments into 7 or even 8 streams to mitigate financial risk, so that when this fails, at least you have savings. If you don't have savings, maybe you have some asset. If you don't have that, maybe you have a shop that is giving you like daily income. And then we're also thinking that you seek help, especially if you're struggling with debt, considering advice from a financial advisor. It can also be a counselor, provide guidance, especially knowing that some of the consequences come with mental health challenges. In conclusion, we are saying that debts are like children. You know, we get them with pleasure. We get them with pleasure, but brought forth with pain. So we get children when we are happy. We get a loan, a debt when you're happy, but when you're paying back, it becomes very painful. So the fact that it becomes very painful, you know, we need to be cautious about, you know, how we get them. We are not saying we don't get them, we get them, but the how, the assessing the risk and when, all that. Then we need to take control of our debts. And here we emphasize on the potential for financial freedom, reducing stress. I think, you know, this is where we are saying if we live in our means, then we are able at least to reduce stress, or don't go for something you're not able to, you know, to accommodate within your means. Then we're also thinking that we can also make reference to resources for further learning and support. You can take a short financial course. We've done some of them. You get a mentor in financial matters or accountability partner, a spouse or a trusted friend. So sometimes when you're going to make these decisions, don't make them alone, you know, consult for someone who can stand with you and help. Then we have important equation worth remembering is that when you earn $5 earned minus $7 spent equals to a happy life. That is John Morrison. So you have the $5, you've spent $7, definitely something will go wrong. And the last one, we are encouraging us to read books. Dennis encouraged me to read some of the books, but he reads, I think, financial books more than I do. I'm interested more in leadership. But Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Cash Flow, Quadrant, Rich Man in Babylon, Millionaire Next Door, and then Secrets of Super Achievers. These are in Denis's library. Maybe if you speak to him so nicely, he can borrow you and you return. And one of the things we wanted to say is that when you borrow money, let's pay back. Let's have the discipline to pay back. I think we are done with our presentation. Thank you so much.
You are welcome. Thank you. That Taremwas. Wow. That was an eye-opening, of course, to many of us. And to many of us who are going in for marriage, things are about to date now, I think. But we want to thank you so much. Thank you, Taremwa, for talking to us, for speaking to us this evening. It was really a good session. I can see wows in the chat. I think you can also see from the chat, people are giving the virtual claps. You know, when you see them very many, just assume even that the whole congregation is also clapping, like everyone is clapping. So we want to thank you so much. The words were really tough, some of them, and some of the words were directly telling the other gender that is next to Mr. Taremwa to please handle to handle the expenses with care. But all in all, it calls all of us to be cautious of our finances. Another thing that I want to say that I have learned is checking my bank statements. I think that some of us that's something we don't even do. Me personally, it's something I have. I remember the last time I went to ask for a bank statement. It was a joint account where we were saving money together, and because we needed some things to be put, that's when I went for, and I asked for it. But now it's coming to my attention that I also need to check out these. The bank statements. Otherwise, we want to thank you so much about the things fellow Christians paying when you borrow. You have to pay. Paying, we have to pay. That was something also that was very good. So we want to thank you, Taremwa. Thank you for the good presentation. That's what I can see in the chat. It was an eye-opening presentation. Thank you, Denis and Rose. Good insights. Thank you, Taremwa. Is it possible to share the slides for this presentation? I know that they will share them. They can even share them through the chat here, and people can read through. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I don't think if we have a question, friends, if we have a question, we can you can please kindly write it in the chat, and I can read it to our speakers. But to sum it up, even our time is not on our side. I don't know, but okay, the slides will be shared. Yes, the slides, everyone is looking for the slides. It was really a great presentation, and we want to thank you so much, Taremwa. I want to invite, I want to ask our host to make oh, Dixon is already co-host. Please, Dixon, just a word of, a bottle of thanks to our speakers. I want to ask you kindly to come and thank for us, these speakers, as we